Hey guys, okay, so this is actually take two on this one. Um, we'll put it down to my amateur computer skills. So, the first thing before I get right into the crux of everything is obviously there's in my book I spend a fair portion rambling on about because clearly the average person would just think, yeah, they're in jail, who cares, doesn't bother us, get them breaking rocks, put electrodes. It doesn't work like that. Believe me, otherwise they would. So so I spend a fair bit of time explaining how bad things have become in Victoria for it to get to the stage that it's got to. I mean, again, you'll hear me say this. I say this a lot. Nobody truly knows their nation until they've been inside one of their prisons. So, inside one of their prisons is a unit called Salamander. Now, that prison unit, I kid you not, was built in Victoria around the time of 2007, 2009, because they envisaged that they were going to expose a lot of corruption, police corruption, government corruption, and they built an entire prison unit. Now, you think, they built a prison. No. They built an entire prison unit. This prison unit called Salamander at Port Phillip Prison, the now soon to be closed Port Phillip Prison, it actually has larger cells. Now, out there in internet world somewhere is a story on how they built that prison unit with those larger cells. That's all there in concrete. There's no tin foil on this one. This is a fact. They built a prison unit in anticipation for all the corruption they were about to expose in Victoria. So that's there with the bigger cells. It's all there. We all used to joke about this place with the larger cells. Now, in 2007, they had an OPI investigation. Office of Professional Integrity, it was called back then. And that didn't run. They couldn't get us. A New South Wales judge said, like, it got reported in Sydney. I didn't get much airtime down here. But basically, they if you build a prison unit at great cost to the Victorian taxpayer and don't use it because of that OPI investigation didn't end up running. They cancelled it because the legislation didn't get passed. Which is all well and good. No problem. We didn't do the investigation. Another example. Still plodding along, iterating. There's my favourite word. Iterating through. We're still to this day handling that same type of. Well, it's ugly. It's dodgy. It's corruption, because now you've got all the way to a pedophile ring, and basically what's happening? You've got a government investigating itself. So anyway, let's just cut back a bit before we get into mind-numbing stuff. So you have this OPI investigation that couldn't run its course, and you have factually, it's all there in concrete, this prison unit built in anticipation for all these corrupt police and government people that were going to get locked up. No worries, the OPI investigation doesn't run. Which leads to one question. What happened to all those corrupt people that were expected to be filling those prison cells? Obviously, by the look of the state of Victoria, with the record level of snouts in the trough, all having a racking lines of taxpayer money. Hey, cut it up, cuz. Put it on the plate, bro. We can't get any more of that taxpayer. Fucking what? They'll be right. Don't worry about them. What, they're kids? No, don't worry about it. Give us that plate. I want another. Yeah, anymore. Jacinta, can you cut open that bag? We need some more of that money, please. It's literally as bad as that. And all you sort of go, oh yeah, police corruption here and that. No. It's all the same. I jokingly call it in my book the template skeleton for each government department. It's like that's their just go to. Just get in there, and you'll hear me get around to the more of that Nelson Mandela. Nobody knows their nation until they've been in one of their prisons. You'll hear me discuss about the prison officers often complaining about those in the higher up racking up lines of taxpayer money, but I'll get to that later. So for now, I start the book in what is to me very, very important, because aside the fact that Daniel Andrews, during this time, Daniel Andrews was the premier, the buck stops with him. If he wants to allow for civilian inmates to be tortured, if he wants to allow for an anti-corruption unit to stalk and harass the dogs, he should be called in front of a royal commission to explain how did he let it happen. He knew damn well what caused some of the worst crimes this nation has ever seen. He knew what was behind it, and he just let it go on, just in exactly the same way that we're seeing it happen now, except now we're talking about children. Aside what happened to me, being exposed to, just little old me being exposed to, that's one person being exposed to a myriad of drug addicted women getting used in the most degrading way, but their toddlers being used as like a currency. Like, seriously. And they couldn't, these people, which you'll hear me explain in this one, these people, good, normal people, aside the way they'd be rolling their eyes like they got mortgages to pay, they got lives to live, they can't do anything about it. But then the other side of that coin is they think there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They think they cannot see one bit of a problem in rewarding a drug addicted woman with the return custody of her toddler. Not even that, using it, dangling it over her to get her to do their dirty work for them. And that's just one example. And the way it happened like that tells me I'm no one-off. This is like an MO. They've used this toddler currency. They've used these weaponized sex offences before. This is like a go-to. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to have to orchestrate this. How are we going to do this? Oh, geez. It was like, look what we can do now. Look at this. It was bonkers. But anyway, so why that becomes poignant is because, as well, when you add to that, Daniel Andrews was voted in on arguably the largest the reason that he got voted in was there was a horrendous murder, which a lot of you will remember, of Jill Meagher. Now, Jill Meagher, it was terrible. The person was on parole, he was on bail. Basically, it created the situation that we're in today in Victoria, where not only the left hand didn't talk to the right hand, the left hand hated the right hand. They all, because it was making bad press, and corrections were blaming parole, and parole were blaming corrections, and the police were blaming the courts, and the courts were blaming, and it turned into an entire industry, arguably the most important of important industries, right alongside the health department, I'm guessing, is your law and order system not communicating. Just literally, and it led to the most petty, ridiculous system you could come across. But it gets worse in the sense that they have a little department to protect that. They have this little, I was exposed to this little, I call it an anti-corruption unit, where they have this little unit, this department, who trolls media, manipulates media, stalks it. Who does that? The police? Maybe it's out of a police office. I don't know. But if so, they watched crimes happen and didn't lay charges. That aside, you're gonna have to forgive me for digressing, because there's a lot of head doers in this, coming from the most mismanaged, backwards government on the planet. Keep in mind, we are talking about record-setting crime stats. We're driving on driving on potholed roads. We've had prisons just sitting there empty while fully staffed. They report it now at 18 months, but it's closer to more like 3 years. It is madness. It is literally the biggest rot in the world. That you've got the left hand pays and the right rakes it in, and then you got people jumping over job queues. Just anyway, there's that digression. So, what happens with the Gilmar murder was Dan Andrews came. I'm going to do everything to reduce the women's domestic violence rate. So I start the book with 2020, 62 dead women. This is just off me Googling it. Excuse me, forgive me if they're not wrong or there's different figures out there. This was just me Googling it off one of the many, stats sites. 2020, 62 dead women. 2021, 44 dead women. 2022, 56 dead women. 2023, 64 dead women. 2024, 78 dead women. Now, the reason I point this out at the beginning of both books is because while this was all on for this whole decade spent whispering, right, careful, this guy, well, he was in an IBAC investigation against one of our own, careful, all these resources went into that. All these resources went into literally weaponizing a sex offense against me, literally catching me with my pants down with women and then circulating it amongst all the corrections staff. I kid you not, like just disgusting. So hidden cameras in bathrooms and then talking about the size of your genitals, like seriously coming out of a government department. So the reason I mention this is because in that time, had they spent the same amount of resources they spent on protecting their own self-interests, they could have saved the life of just one girl, just one woman, that's all. All you were in that decade, all you had to do was save one woman's life, and that would have been better for the community than the 10, 12 odd years you spent following me around, stalking me, trying to ruin the reputation, poking me with AI, then letting everybody hear me tell them to go fuck themselves, all that type of just childish nonsense. Anyway, so it's very important to me, the women's domestic violence rate, because it highlights right up there, highlights how dangerous tokenism and perception in politicians is, because the public all think, yeah, okay, something's happening about something so serious. Bonkers. Bollocks. It's not. That's just their way to get votes in, get you to vote them in. You think, yeah, something's happened, and it's not. It's spiraling up. It's worse than when they first started putting in those bail laws and all this. And that is what also makes my story, this story, ridiculous, disgusting, at next level disgusting. So anyway, today we jump to chapter 4 of the first book. Instead of me just rambling on about myself at the beginning and how I got to be, the wheels fell off my life and whatnot, I jump to chapter 4, which is basically I call it life-saving life lessons. A person who claims to be taught by themselves is a fool, for they had a fool for a teacher. I might be a fool, but I'm a sane fool who was mighty glad that he had taught himself. And what I'm referring to there is I was blessed that I was aware of what was happening to me. I was aware when I was locked in a cell that they were using basically facial recognition, AI bot technology, to try and drive me insane, to try and drive me crazy, to try and make me paranoid. And it, the way I came about knowing, like the fact that is even anywhere near a civilian prison is bonkers in itself. Like, you have all this woke, this is why I'm so like anti-woke, because you have all this DEI, this inclusion, love, tolerance, and this extreme left views that the politicians in Australia have been creating playing divisive politics for 20, 30 years, to the point where, almost to the point where we don't live in a democracy anymore. Because if it's not the Greens, it's the left Labor. They've almost conned the public that well with these divisive policies. Like, if you say anything against any other race, bar a white person, you are a racist. To me, that is all utter bonkers. It is a complete farce. It is just put there by politicians to create division so they can got something to play politics on. And why I say that so with such conviction is because here you have a civilian prison system in the wokest state of Australia, literally breaking laws set out to protect us from Nazi Germany. Literally, the laws written surrounding a country's management of a prison and what they call the bare minimum standards on how you treat an inmate. That was all written out when? Right at the end of World War II. Right at the end of World War II, I believe the Geneva Convention, something along those lines, came into play, and they put in some humanitarian plays. Whoa, we can't be having this happen to humanity again. So they put in some this is how you got to behave, okay, nations? Like, you got to do that. And in that was how to treat war criminals and how to treat prisoners of war. But in prisoners of war, a prisoner of war, if you're in another country, you're just no different to a prisoner. So in the prisoners of war was a thing called the bare minimum standards of how to treat an inmate. So now you have the wokest state of this country in breach of laws and human rights charters, literally international laws, set out to protect us from Nazi Germany, and I jokingly say in the book, and Emperor Hirohito when he was in one of his more torturous moods. And it's the truth. It is 100% the truth. You put somebody in a jail cell and then use a chatbot. I'm not talking about Siri, turn the light on. Siri, play Stairway to Heaven. These are like little torturous bots designed to do your head in while you're locked in a cell. That's next level. It's torturing people. Anyway, so the reason I pointed out life-saving life lessons and knowledge is power and all that, because what happened around 9/11, and this is what else I say, it's disgusting in itself how the start of me having to explain this to you, I have to go to the most disgusting of I have to go to 9/11. I have to go to World War II to be able to explain what these people have been doing. And then later we'll go to some corrupt police examples, and you'll see how fucked up Victoria's mismanagement mismanagement in its governments has got this state. And I'll repeat this again, but the reason the mismanagement part is so important is because it is the same mismanagement that basically sees your child having to leave the good shoes at home for fear of getting stabbed to death should they make the mistake of going out in the nice kicks you bought them. And that's the facts. It's not like, oh yeah, I jokingly call it the template skeleton. So you have this template skeleton of government department mismanagement and, disgustingly, I hate saying this word, but it's the truth, incompetence. And I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've been exposed to DEI employment policies, seeing people jump the job queue in prisons, but worse, I've seen them use their position of power to then try and force, in my case it was through the use of being locked in a cell, them having the ability to drive that little AI bot and basically make me go to sleep listening to extreme left views getting pumped into my head. I kid you not. I mean, what the hell is that? You've got these people jumping job queues because of their belonging to one minority group or another, but then while you're sitting there trying to get some sleep, they're forcing their ideologies on you. Now, we got a problem when that's happening. And that has happened. That has happened in Victoria and is probably still happening, or at least would have been still happening had I not done what I've done. And that's a fact. Anyway, so to get back to the start, the chapter 4, the life-saving lessons, we go to 9/11, around the 9/11 period. What happened was there was a lot of pressure, understandably, there was a lot of pressure on America to prove to the world that they weren't, they weren't mistreating people in Guantanamo Bay. So what happened was a lot of documentaries, a lot of media came out surrounding the handling of Guantanamo Bay. And in that was explaining how they're extracting their information. And one of the ways they do that, aside waterboarding, which was how waterboarding became famous, but one of their ways they do that is they use AI, bot technology now, and they basically just pipe voices in. It's almost like, technically it's like a good cop, bad cop, good cop, bad cop. They're designed to, although this wasn't being used for this in the Victorian civilian prison system, technically what they do is they have like a good cop, bad cop. They're designed to get a reaction out of the person. Like all he's hearing 24/7 is hearing something. And over a period of time, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 12 months, a suspected terrorist, we're talking wars and whatnot, we're talking Mossad and CIAs, they glean the intel, like they're that secret, they're that tight, they literally, how are we going to get this information? So they get them slowly talking, hang on, he's never Mary, is there any Mary close to this guy? And they go scrolling through, and it's like that. They'll get them just saying one word, but that one word may join the dots for the next, and then they'll lock in on that for a bit, and over 7 months, 12 months, 9 months, however long, they glean the information that they want to glean. That's the purpose of this bot technology. Somehow, that's migrated itself to being in the civilian prison system. So that there is just disgusting in itself. What for? What have you got that anywhere near a civilian prison system in a state that it fully runs on a judicial system that works on innocent until proven guilty, and also in a remand prison? So what for? What, in case you got to torture a confession out of someone? And this is in the state that produced the only one of its kind, the only one in the universe, a defense lawyer for an informant. So they still haven't paid that debt, and they're doing stuff like this. But anyway, then the other thing I've gone to explain in this waffle on to paint the picture is another one we go to at post World War II was right about that time they put some human behaviour experiments together, and these are the things that, I don't know if this one saved me. The knowledge of this wouldn't have saved me, but it certainly helps understand things a little bit. And they put together a thing called the Milgram experiment, which is very famous. Everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people have heard of the Milgram experiment. Basically just was a fake experiment. Now this was set up around, I think it was technically set up around a Nazi war criminal trial, and they were, I think the Nazi guy was trying to use, I just was following orders as an excuse. And they basically set up an experiment where a person of the highest rank, nobody above this guy, was to say, they set up a fake like questionnaire, and they had a little dial, and they even marked it, lethal dose, anything above this, you're going to kill them. Something like 66%, like a very high percentage. In some cases more, 70, depending, they did it all around the world. And about 66% of people were prepared to commit murder, were prepared to administer lethal doses of electricity and to kill somebody if they got the question wrong. If the buck didn't stop with them, like if they were just like, oh, I'm just doing what I'm told, they were prepared to kill people, which is bloody scary. But you know what that points out? That points out you want to be sure you've got good people in those positions. Albo, Daniel Andrews, hello. You know, you want to make sure you haven't got dickheads up there, because you'll end up just being a perfectly normal human. You could end up killing somebody. So, and that's the truth. It's not like, oh, maybe, could be. Like, this is what the best human behaviour psychs and psychologists and psychiatrists learn. It's what they believe. There's nothing that's debunked it that I know of. So then the other one that comes into play is another, again, it was around the same time. They're doing all these human behaviour experiments, trying to learn, how did the world go so, how did these Nazis go so bad? And this is what I say, you have to actually be careful of it, because people don't realise it's actually happening to them. People don't realise they're getting intoxicated by absolute power, which is, yeah, okay, we're still in Australia. But when you start removing your opposition, and when you start just having absolute power unchecked, then a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And then before you know it, you've got, I mean, we're never going to have concentration camps set up and Holocaust situation in Australia. Never, ever, 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 never. Not in my lifetime, your time, not 10 generations. It's just, it won't happen. But it doesn't mean you still won't get some of the same negative aspects if you haven't got somebody to keep the bastards honest, basically. You have a negative aspect right now for the average person. Right now you have a negative aspect in the sense that they're investigating themselves over a bloody pedophile ring to avoid embarrassment. Now, you can iterate back. I don't know what my favourite word since I've been getting into software is iterate. Iterate through that for loop of this, or iterate through an infinite loop. I don't know what the reverse to reiterate. Let's reiterate, okay? We'll reiterate and go back a bit, because before you have the investigating themselves for the most disgusting of disgusting, being the pedophiles, you have them investigating themselves for the CFMEU, or you have them investigating themselves for whatnot, or police corruption, and then you have them investigating themselves in an OPI investigation. Oh, geez, that got cancelled, you know. And then, even worse, after that OPI investigation got a little bit close to the flame, a little bit close there, what did Mr. Andrews do? The first thing he did when he got into office was installed what? An independent, broad-based anti-corruption unit, which is well known for being toothless. And what is that? It's not independent. How's it independent? You installed it. Who's there to truly keep the bastards honest? And that is what we're experiencing now. And that is what this entire my little ditty is all about. But anyway, it's exactly what happened to me. I got exposed to the anti-corruption unit, literally, where they wanted to ruin the reputation. You're not telling that story. You know how many prison officers? How's the book going, Michael? Just after they'd made reference to what I did in the bedroom, I kid you not, they literally weaponised a sex offence against me repeatedly to try and get at me for daring to do this. What world is that? What free world is that? Anyway, so the other one I touch on to build on into the rest of the podcast series is the Stanford Prison Experiment. Dum, dum, dum. The Stanford Prison Experiment was done by, I think, Professor Philip Zimbardo, and he did a prison experiment. He basically created a fake prison, and he gave literally, and he made it very, like, he wanted to point out as random as he could. He selected randomly for the prison officers. He selected random. The whole thing was as random as he could make it, trying to point out that these are just normal, like the Milgram experiment, just normal, everyday people. And 50% of them, drawn out of a hat, were given the uniform. You know, the prison officer. They even hilariously gave them the aviators to cover the windows to your soul. And the inmates were obviously stripped down to just all the one same uniform, were fed. Anyway, within it was set out to go for 3 months. It was cancelled within about 2 weeks or something because it got that disturbing. The prison officers started lording their power. The prisoners started abusing the prison officers. It got very ugly. And the biggest thing to take from that was the documentary maker asked the professor, what would you do differently? And the biggest thing to take from it was he goes, I would have made sure I had somebody watching my back, some independent person to watch me, because I was even getting sweat. I didn't even realise. It wasn't until somebody just luckily came in and tapped him on the shoulder and said, what are you doing? Look at this. This is crazy. That he snapped out of it. And that highlights exactly, aside what the professor was trying to demonstrate, that just good, normal, everyday people turn bad without even realising it's happening to them. But you need genuine independent bodies to look over. If you police yourself, our entire system is set up around that. Now, if you remove that, it's not even like, oh, that's a bad person. It's just what humans do. You give humans absolute power, and for the most part, they'll do dumb things with it. They'll do silly things. They'll write themselves checks. They'll, it's just the way it is. So it's not even like saying, oh, he's a bad politician, or dang that. He's actually perfectly normal. What was wrong was we didn't have genuine independent people watching over this perfectly normal person, and of course he's going to start paying himself. Of course he's going to start doing this and doing that. It's just in the it's human interest. We know this. There's no like, oh really? Geez, I could never have told. Oh gosh. And that is why it is so important to have genuine independent bodies, not just where you've got to like ring up and go, hey, I saw something, I'm scared for my life now because I'm still working here. You should have it exactly like how Bridgestone used to do with us, which I happen to score very highly in. No, but in all seriousness, you have, for example, a corporation will have a thing called a mystery shopper to ensure that you're getting nice, decent, You can't even do that for your prisons, police, your government, most important of important departments. You can't even keep, people go, oh yeah, like, no, you do it for, Coles do it to make sure that their staff are working, everything's like as per what they would expect in their ethics policies. Yet you don't have it in your police. You don't have it in your prisons. Worse, if you dare question them, they rile up like some cartel, bringing their helicopters over and stalking you and going after you, trying to crush you. Yeah, no one questions us. Yeah, you don't question officers, rock and ape. All right. And it's literally like that, which is, again, I'll say this 1,000 times, which is fine if your crime rate was good. It's not. You know why? Because it doesn't work like that. Sorry, it just doesn't. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And if you want proof of that, I don't know if I've already said this, but if you want proof of that, you only need to look at America, who has more prisons, more police, more law enforcement, more security, more guns, more death sentences, more everything law enforcement. But what does it have? It also has more drugs and more crime. It just doesn't work like that. Sorry. I know it feels good. Yeah, he stole a Mars bar, smack him over the head. Yeah, kill him. Let's electrocute the bastard. But it doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit your children. It doesn't benefit you financially. It doesn't benefit anybody. The other example of that is you go to the period that was about the 92 or 94 LA riots, right around the time where NWA was singing "Fuck the police, come straight from the underground," that era, to the Southeast LA colours around that period. That was all. What was behind all that, including the riots? A corrupt police force. A corrupt police force that was in bed with the drug dealers, that was taking... Corrupt police ain't King Kong up in here, okay? We learnt that back in training day, okay? Anyway, so I have to sort of paint this picture out before I get into some of the ins and outs and ups and downs of... It's just disgusting. Like, literally, when you have children being used as currency, and I'll say this again and again, when you have children being used as currency, think about being a disenfranchised young, like, had a hard knock life on drug, not got enough going against you. You've lost your toddler, and then here, if you do this, you can have your toddler. Think about that. Being bribed with the return. Aside the ramifications of the negative ramifications, as in like the overriding child protection, aside that side of it, just think of the degrading treatment of a human being. And this is the progressive, tolerant, woke state of Australia. It's nuts. So anyway, on this chapter, I also touch on, I do a little search for what they call the Commissioner's requirements. And this kind of made me sick, because in this Commissioner's requirements, I just did a quick search and then just cut and paste, and I stopped literally at where I stopped, because it was just like, are you kidding? And as in, and this is that template skeleton for the mismanagement that has seen Victoria's spiral into the mess that it's in. It's not benefiting anybody, and the record crime stats is proof of that, no end. The potholed roads, yeah. The $200 billion debt, yeah. The ghost prison that sat empty, they say, for 18 months, but it's more like 3 years, fully staffed with no inmates, yeah. The hospitals struggling to get ambulances in and out, yeah. Or hang on, what about the 90-year-old who rang 000 3 times and ended up bleeding to death? Yeah. What about the kid who got stabbed for the good shoes to death? Yeah. What about the young doctor who got stabbed to death? Yeah. Come on. These people had no business doing anything but doing what the taxpayer pays them to do. That's how toxic it's gotten in Victoria. Anyway, so we get to the Commissioner's requirements. This is what the prison system should adhere to. Here I go. I got a sample of a Commissioner's requirements found through a simple, very quick Google click and scroll through what is a very long list of bureaucratically written toilet paper, among others, which I will be sure to peruse at a later date, I can assure you. Led me to 5.1, professional and ethical behaviour in reference to prison officers employed at both private and government prisons. 5.1.1, correctional employees must demonstrate the highest standards of workplace professionalism and ethical behaviour. Obligations include, but are not limited to, modelling pro-social behaviours and attitudes, demonstrating respect for others, including other correctional employees, prisoners and offenders, and other persons with whom they come into contact, demonstrating care and respect for property, including workplace facilities and property belonging to prisoners and offenders, maintaining confidentiality of sensitive security and personal information. Behaviours considered unacceptable and inappropriate include communication, electronically transmitted communication, which is sexually inappropriate, my God, racially or religiously insensitive, discriminatory in nature or otherwise offensive to the recipients, whether this is with or about another correctional employee, prisoner, offender, visitor, victim, or any other. intentionally or recklessly placing correctional employees in a situation where their safety, security, or workplace authority is compromised. Failing to take reasonable steps for the security of the prison or part of the prison. Da, 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 da. And then it goes on to that goes on to explaining all about then bullying, harassment, and disrespect. And then this one, where I stopped. Promoting or engaging in innuendo and gossip relating to correctional employees, prisoners, and or offenders. Are these people kidding? These people have circulated private letters, repeatedly made reference to bedroom activity, like literally weaponized a sex offense, repeatedly used fellow drug addicted women who were either living in the same, it was just set me up with basically to try and get at me in the most degrading way. One was compromised with the child dangled over them. This is all not to solve crimes, not because I was because I was involved in an IBAC investigation against one of their own, a prison officer. So it'll slowly unravel, and I hope I'm not too all over the place. I'll try and keep it, but yeah, again, what I was exposed to, when you combine that with the knowledge of everything else, as in the pedophile story, the investigating themselves, disgusting. Wait till you hear about some of the worst crimes in this, the innocent life costing crimes being directly caused by the same aggravating head doing bots that I had levelled against me. It is disgusting. And then magistrates making smart ass barbs about the sport being played with people, fully complicit, fully aware what is going on, fully aware that rogue, well-known corrupt police officers in the state of Victoria are using head-doing little aggravating bot technology, installing it on the local meth heads' phones, watching them do their heads in, aggravated to within an inch of their lives. There was one example. This is after 7 years after being well aware that that tactic was responsible for causing a bad crime, that a very bad crime. 7 years after being aware of that, these people were still, these mismanaged muppets were still using that little aggravating bot, to the point where I saw firsthand a well-known violent offender who ended up wigging out, stabbing an innocent person, and very nearly smashing an axe over the unsuspecting, brave first responder's head. Now you tell me if we haven't got a problem in Victoria. Speak soon. Again, apologise if I'm all over the place. I'm just getting my, camera mojo.